Please, lend me money for the hospital.
Upon opening the door, there was the grandson, dragging his swollen and painful leg. He's only 6 years old. There should have been quite a distance from home to here. I was at a loss in this unusual situation.
No, absolutely not. I won't lend you any money.
My usually silent husband shouted angrily. At the cold response from my husband, the grandson had a look of despair. And then, my husband tried to grab the swollen leg of the grandson with red and black bruises. At 60 years old, I have finished raising my children. Even at 66, my husband Gary and I continued to spend peaceful days together, both still working. Gary is a quiet man, hardly speaking. I'm not much of a talker either, and even when we're both silent, there's no tension, rather, it's calming. We have only one child, our son. He joined the military and by the age of 35, he had risen to the rank of major. In that year, at a social event held at the base, he met Tamara and they married. Having attended an all-boys school, our son, who had no experience with women, fell head over heels for his young wife and soon they were blessed with children. Before we knew it, our grandson Scott had turned 6 and was in his final year of kindergarten. However, my daughter-in-law and grandson became sources of concern for me. Our son held a high rank in the military, with a good salary, but his work was busy, and he could only come home a few times a year. As a result, our grandson spent most of his time with his mother Tamara. Tamara's family lived far away, so we, as a couple, would visit them about once a week to check in. But that changed when our grandson started kindergarten. From then on, Tamara's behavior gradually became strange. According to her, our grandson wasn't very healthy, so Tamara began to restrict his outings, food, and contact with others. The time we could spend with our grandson became less and less, until finally it was only for special occasions like birthdays and Christmas. When we did see him, he always seemed to be injured or unwell. Scott, what happened to this injury? And why the eye patch? He bumped into a friend at kindergarten. As for the eye patch, he got a sty. Please don't touch it too much because it hurts. Our grandson is not very talkative. In fact, it seems like Tamara avoids me trying to talk to him. Tamara seems like a calm and ordinary woman at first glance, but when it comes to her son, she becomes like a different person. Scott, here's a pencil for you. You like these, right? It's from that superhero show. What was its name? Use it when you start elementary school. I'm sorry, but he doesn't like those kinds of things. But didn't he mention it the other day? When he was drawing. We're not watching that show anymore. Fighting and defeating. If Scott imitates that violent stuff and gets hurt again, what will you do? If we accidentally give something to our grandson without consulting Tamara, she erupts like a raging fire. While I can understand being concerned about food affecting his health due to allergies, I was surprised when she yelled at me for giving him a box of pencils. He had another seizure at kindergarten. It seems like he forgot his medicine. That's right. It must have been tough. Here, take this, it's a little bit of money for you, from my husband. It must be hard for you to go out. Tell me what you need, and I'll go shopping. Thank you so much. Lucky you, Scott. Say thank you to Grandpa and Grandma. On the contrary, when I provide financial assistance like this, or when I ask her before buying something, she expresses an overwhelming amount of gratitude. I felt a slight sense of fear at the sudden change in my daughter-in-law's behavior. Our son is hardly ever around because of work, so raising a needy child alone in an unfamiliar place must be tough. So, I can understand feeling nervous, but it seemed like she was going too far. We should be more involved with them. Thinking that, I picked up the phone and dialed my daughter-in-law's number. Tamara, Scott will be starting elementary school next year, right? So, I wanted to celebrate somehow. Thank you. Then, I'd like a school bag. Oh, I see. What kind would you like? Shall we go together to pick one out? No, my husband and I will choose it. I'll let you know the price after we decide. Goodbye. I still had more to say, but she cut me off as if she had finished what she needed to say, leaving me feeling one-sided.
She never learns, does she? You too.
When I thought he was talking to me for once, what was that about? Even though there was no point in blaming my husband, I couldn't help but let out an irritated voice. I honestly have my doubts about Tamara. It feels like she's just asking for money. And because it's her, I feel like she won't let Scott choose. Even though it's something Scott will use.
It's fine. Everyone has their own parenting style. Their parenting is up to that couple. If you interfere too much, you'll just get scolded again.
I wondered if my concern for my grandson made me seem like an intrusive grandmother to my husband and Tamara. But Gary does have a point. Maybe it's better to just give money. Maybe that's how we can manage things better. I realized that it might not be a good idea for me, as a mother-in-law, to meddle too much in the life of a young wife struggling to raise her child alone in a place far from home. So, I reconsidered, and for a while, I maintained an appropriate distance from my daughter-in-law and grandson. Until something happened. It was a cold day in early winter. Suddenly, in the middle of the night, the doorbell rang. Wondering who it could be at such a late hour, I opened the door and was shocked by the unexpected sight. Scott? At the door stood my grandson, barely able to stand, in a state that seemed like he could collapse at any moment. His clothes were dirty in places, he only had one shoe on, and he looked extremely exhausted. But what surprised me the most was that his left foot was swollen from the toes to the ankle. He must have taken off one shoe because it was too swollen and painful to wear, due to having taken it off after it swelled. His foot was about a size larger than usual, and it was discolored with bruising, and there was no way he could walk properly. What on earth happened? This terrible injury? And where's your mother? Panicking and asking questions, Scott didn't answer, but muttered quietly.
I want to go to the hospital. Please lend me money.
After that, no matter what I said, the answer was the same. From Scott's home to ours, it would take an hour even for an adult to walk, so if he had walked. I thought it was no ordinary matter.
No, absolutely not lending any money.
As I stood there stunned, my husband's voice suddenly came from behind. When I turned around, he was standing with his arms crossed, staring straight at our grandson. Gary. Why would you say such a thing? At my husband's callous response, our grandson's face fell into despair, almost on the verge of tears.
If you have time to panic, why don't you hurry up and let him come in?
With those words, my husband swiftly picked up our grandson and took him into the house. Our grandson, who had never seen Gary raise his voice before, seemed frightened and started crying loudly.
Be quiet.
Then, to my shock, my husband, in a fit of anger, tried to hold down our crying grandson and grab his swollen foot. "Gary, please don't be rough. He's still a child. It's different from dealing with adults."
Bring some ice water. And get some tape.
After providing immediate first aid to our grandson, we rushed to the emergency room. As it turns out, my husband is a judo therapist, and we run our own chiropractic clinic. According to him, it was immediately apparent that our grandson had a fracture even without an examination. When we got x-rays at the hospital, sure enough, our grandson's foot was fractured.
Perhaps due to continuing to walk even after the fracture, the symptoms are quite severe. There may be lingering effects.
When the doctor told us that, I couldn't help but gasp and cover my mouth. Our grandson had to be hospitalized for treatment. With so much shocking events happening at once, my head felt like it was about to explode, but I couldn't afford to just remain confused. Waiting for Scott to calm down with the pain reliever taking effect, I tried to look as calm as possible while watching over him. "Why did you come alone late at night? When did you get hurt?" However, my grandson, who doesn't talk much to begin with, seemed too shocked to respond.
Let's contact his mother for now.
In my panic, I had completely forgotten the priority, and my husband's words snapped me back to reality. I completely forgot to contact Tamara. But when my husband reached for his phone, our usually silent grandson suddenly grabbed his hand, trying to stop him from contacting his mother.
Don't tell Mom.
With a voice louder than I had ever heard from him, Scott began to plead. Something seemed off about my grandson. Without a word, both my husband and I sensed it instantly. "All right. Let's do as Scott says. So, can you talk to Grandma and Grandpa?" With a gentle voice, finally, my grandson opened up.
I had a fight with Mom. She got angry and pushed me down the stairs.
"Eh? Tamara did that. Then what happened?"
My foot started getting really red and painful, but Mom fell asleep, so I ran away. I wanted to go to the hospital alone, but I didn't have any money.
I was so shocked that I couldn't even speak. At the same time, suspicion towards Tamara welled up within me. Moreover, as my grandson spoke, he hunched over and trembled slightly. This fear. I don't think he's lying. After discussing with my husband, we decided not to contact Tamara ourselves. If what my grandson said was true, we couldn't send him back to his mother. However, at that moment, I still felt a sense of guilt. Was it okay to blindly believe the words of a 6-year-old and separate him from his mother? Could Tamara, who cherished her child so much, really have caused this child harm? Various questions swirled in my mind as I spent a sleepless night feeling uneasy. Eventually, Tamara contacted us the next morning. She must have noticed that her child was missing. Tamara's voice over the phone sounded very frantic. "He's not here." I simply relayed that message and ended the call. I tried to be careful with my words, but since I wasn't accustomed to lying, I might have seemed suspicious. As a precaution, I also asked the hospital staff not to allow anyone other than my husband and me to visit. I'm glad we prohibited visits. Was it really the right thing to do? I feel like I'm being cruel to Tamara. I expressed my dissatisfaction to my husband, but he didn't respond. I wish he would say something comforting at times like this. I thought that, but since he's always been quiet, I swallowed my words. While my grandson was hospitalized, my husband and I took turns staying with him. One day, a doctor told me there was something concerning and led me to a private room. It was a confirmation about whether my grandson had multiple asthma attacks and allergies, as I had heard from my daughter-in-law, but for some reason, the doctor asked for further tests. Upon learning the results of the tests, my feelings of guilt disappeared instantly. At the same time, my desire to protect my grandson turned into conviction. Then, the police came to our house. Tamara's son was missing, and she reported us as suspects. We agreed to accompany them voluntarily and explained the situation to the police. After answering their questions and providing explanations, they quickly let us go home. Then, Tamara kept contacting us incessantly, demanding her son back. For some reason, she seemed convinced that we were involved. Since we didn't want the police to storm our house before we were prepared, we ignored Tamara's calls for a few days and stayed elsewhere. During this time, we consulted with certain individuals and cooperated with gathering evidence. Once we were prepared, I called Tamara. "If you're willing to admit what you've done and make amends, come to our house." "So, it was you who took my son away. I'll never forgive you." After hanging up abruptly, she immediately came to our house. "Where's Scott? Give me back my son." As soon as she arrived home, Tamara began shouting furiously. She seemed surprised for a moment when she saw her parents at our house, thinking it was just my husband and me. "Why are my parents here? What's going on?" When I told them about what you did to Scott, they came. Tamara, who never expected her parents to know, gritted her teeth. Her parents looked at her with cold eyes. "Scott is safe. I can't return him to a mother who can't have a calm conversation." When I said this calmly, Tamara seemed to understand that getting angry here would be futile and calmed down a bit. "Why is this happening? Haven't you figured it out yet?" First, we explained the sequence of events when our grandson came home and confirmed if what Scott said was true. "There's no way I would push Scott down the stairs. That kid lies all the time, you know." The daughter-in-law, who showed no remorse, crossed her arms and seemed irritated. "He's the one at fault. He said he wanted cake at his friend's birthday party, despite having allergies to eggs and wheat. Is that the reason? Did you hurt him over something like that?" "No. He ran away from home on his own. I tried to stop him. He probably tripped somewhere out of guilt, got injured, and couldn't come back." As she said that, Tamara began to cry. "He's so weak, I have to protect him. I just want to protect him, but why are you getting in the way?" To an outsider, it might seem like we were belittling a devoted mother. "He has allergies and illnesses. Yet I don't even know what he's eating or where. Do you know how hard it is?" In the end, Tamara stared at me with teary eyes. But I couldn't be swayed by emotions. I silently presented the results of my grandson's tests to Tamara. "Don't worry, he can eat anything and won't have any attacks." The test results showed that my grandson was perfectly healthy, with no chronic conditions or allergies. However, he was malnourished, had delayed physical development, and had unnatural bruises in multiple places on his body. According to the doctor, considering these results, it was possible that she was excessively interfering with the child, sometimes intentionally causing injuries and then treating them. When we were taken to the police station, we explained Tamara's usual over-interference with the child, my grandson's testimony, the circumstances that led to his hospitalization, and the diagnosis from the doctor. As a result, the police took this matter seriously and conducted further investigations. It's only a matter of time before your actions come to light. So, before it becomes a big issue, confess. Just as I was about to say that, I was startled. Tamara, who had been emotional just moments ago, suddenly had an expressionless face like a mask. Do you believe what that quack doctor says more than me, who has raised Scott for 6 years? She said this in one breath, like a machine emitting sound, and it was somehow eerie. Yes. Perhaps this was the end result of unchecked validation seeking. Do you go to such lengths to make that child seem weak just so these people call you a good mother? I showed Tamara the screen of my phone. A few days ago, I visited the kindergarten my grandson attends to gather evidence. According to conversations with other moms at the same kindergarten, Tamara regularly posts about her daily life with her grandson on social media. When I saw the content, everything clicked. On social media, Tamara portrayed herself as the epitome of a devoted mother raising a weak child. She seemed to particularly solicit advice from parents of children with rare diseases or allergies. She also seemed to do video streaming and requested support from viewers, labeling it as assistance funds. I don't really understand social media. But using your child just to create buzz? That's not right, is it? With a sigh, I spoke, and the expression on her face, which had been like a mask, gradually changed to one of frustration. You wouldn't understand. Here, everyone looks at me. They all treat me kindly. Taking the phone from me, Tamara began to gaze at the screen with fascination. With practiced movements, she manipulated the screen and displayed several accounts in front of us. This person is a mother of 3 who also works. She's beautiful and capable. Don't you think she's amazing? And this person's husband works from home and they go on family trips every month. What are you talking about? All these people are shining. Why do I have nothing? Tamara wore a lonely expression again and murmured with vacant eyes. I wake up at the same time every day, do housework and take care of the children in the same room all day long. That's all I have. What's wrong with that? Isn't that admirable? Living like this is boring. I wanted to shake Tamara out of it if I could. But it seemed like there was no stopping her now. After a deep sigh, I looked into my daughter-in-law's eyes again. Using Scott just to amuse yourself? Only these people here praise me as an amazing mother. No one says anything when I raise my child normally in real life. Do you know how empty that feels? Even those she called amazing mothers on social media, do they really have glittering lives like on social media? I felt sad thinking that she couldn't see anything beyond that anymore, despite all mothers being equally admirable.
What's so empty about it? You've just enjoyed being praised and even receiving money for it.
My husband, who had been silent until now, muttered this, and everyone, including me, turned to look at him. I gave birth to him and raised him on my own. So, he's mine. I can do whatever I want with him, right? Tamara rolled her eyes and turned red in the face, shouting angrily at us, making the situation even more uncontrollable. I had told my husband earlier not to provoke her as we could see this coming. Without paying any attention to the enraged Tamara, Gary took out his cell phone and said, "Listen." From the phone set to speaker, we could hear our son's voice. In fact, we had already contacted our son in advance. Almost simultaneously with my husband ending the call, the front door opened, and our son, filled with anger, appeared. After explaining the situation to him, he immediately took time off and rushed back from the base. Why? Are you here? As soon as her eyes met her son's, Tamara's flushed face changed completely, quickly turning pale. Being glared at with an angry expression by a man over 180 centimeters tall, she looked like a frog being stared at by a snake.
Divorce me. I'll also claim custody and compensation,
he declared, and both my husband and I felt relieved to hear that. Though normally very lenient with Tamara, our son had decided to be resolute this time for the sake of his beloved Scott. No way. Why now, when everything was going well until now? New. Perhaps realizing that she couldn't escape the worst outcome, Tamara started crying, flailing her arms and legs literally like a child. Seeing a grown adult wailing like that was truly unbearable. I didn't say it out loud, but feeling helpless, I gave a subtle nod to her parents. In response to my signal, her parents quickly called the police for us.
Tamara has a history of becoming uncontrollable, crying and getting angry when things don't go well.
We had heard this when we called them on the phone. That's why we had decided, all together, that if the situation became unmanageable here, we would report her without hesitation. Then, Tamara came to us, looking up with teary eyes. I'm really sorry, everyone. Please forgive me here. This is no joke. Despite his broken bones, you were the one who slept without even searching. Your grandson may suffer from sequelae because he walked with difficulty. Tamara begged for forgiveness, trembling as if her life was over. However, her life was just beginning from here. She had begged her parents and even her son, but there was no one to save her. Listen. Promise that you'll never go near Scott again. Refusing to nod, Tamara was held by arriving police officers. Devil. Monster. Let me go. In the end, Tamara only shouted grievances against us, without a single word of apology or reflection towards the child. It's truly astonishing that you wouldn't even ask about Scott's injuries. You should keenly feel the weight of your own sins. As I said this to her back, she didn't even turn around, and Tamara was taken away in a police car. Afterward, Tamara was arrested for assaulting Scott, her son. According to what I heard from her parents, this wasn't the first time she had become a problem for the police. They seem to have given up on Tamara after this incident, and now she has sold her parents' house and is living with her siblings. Rumors about Tamara spread quickly among the mom circles, and her carefully curated social media accounts were eventually deleted by the platform administrators. Even though everything disappeared so easily, why would someone cling to social media to the extent of losing family and trust? I don't understand. Our son successfully divorced Tamara and obtained custody. He's still busy as usual, so Scott stays with us while our son is away. Without any lingering after effects to worry about, Scott is growing up carefree in a life without unjust restrictions, and lately, he seems very interested in my husband's work, watching from the sidelines.
Instead of hiding there, make sure you watch closely.
Every time he says that, Scott happily runs to his grandfather to learn. How did you find this story? Please subscribe to the channel. Well then, see you in the next video.